Hello everybody, Chris here from Truly Holistic, and this is part two in regards to the new updated Ascendence Healing Charts. So let's get straight into it with part two. So I'm just going to lower you down here. So what we've got here is the next thing after working on attention intention, we've got remove from the hive mind, and in brackets, internet. Now, what I'm referencing there is, for anyone that's had session work here at Tree Holistic or is aware of the work that I provide, is that I don't see the collective. And what I mean by collective, I mean humanity. I don't see it as a consciousness, okay? Through all my experience working on so many clients, my own personal journey, and just observing and experiencing other people's journeys, there's not much sense in the old paradigm that it is a collective consciousness. The more our attention intention, which we just talked about at the end of part one, the more that goes towards the collective, we find that that individual loses their consciousness. They lose their connection to their soul and their consciousness, their authenticity. Okay, so immediately that tells me that how can we enforce or enable a collective connection of everyone being bound and connected to their soul and consciousness through that means actually losing our connection to our soul and consciousness. So what we've come to find is that the collective there is a connection, but it's not through consciousness. It's not through the heart. It's through the mind and the extension of the mind, the brain. Okay, and hence we call it a hive mind instead of a collective consciousness. Okay, and why we put it brackets internet is the model that we know as the internet, right? When we go out and Google search on the internet, use YouTube and Wi-Fi and everything that goes with that. When the internet first came out, it was called the World Wide Web. And a lot of people in this consciousness, spirituality realm, community, will often call it the collective as a grid. Okay. And what I've come to find is actually a more authentic way of calling that, at the same time providing greater insight into that, is actually to call it either a net, an internet, or a web, not a grid. Okay, because it gives you a little bit more of the insights into the purpose of why it was there or built to begin with. And that is really to get humans locked into the mind thought pathway to then be guided, really controlled by the intelligence that then controls the collective narrative. And that's the intelligence that is facilitated through the mind, which you would reference as AI, artificial intelligence. This is why humanity's making a very big push with artificial intelligence at the moment. Now, so why we call it the internet is because the model for the internet that we experience using a computer, and remember the body is an interface, so it's a computer, and that the downloads that if we are getting our information from outside of ourselves, and I did a post on my social media where I asked people, I said, everything you know about you, yourself, your world, your reality, how much of that came from solely within you compared to how much it came from outside of you? And everybody was going, well, everything I know about me and about my reality was taught to me from outside of me, right? So it's a very valid question, and it provides a realization, a revelation to a lot of people that, wow, actually I've been living a life that people have taught me to kind of see it as, perceive it as, use a particular perspective and perception. And maybe if I change that, then my life would change. Yes, it would. Okay. So the body is the computer. And we're going to do a more in-depth video about this where we can, it's all to do with the pituitary connection into the collective and how we take those downloads on, and it influences not only our way that we make choices and decisions, which are transfers of our energy into creation of our experience of reality itself, but also how the body is instructed to work, like how hormones are secreted and so on. Okay, so check that video out, coming out soon. It's going to be one of the biggest videos I'm going to ever put out. But anyway, let's keep going. Let's just come back down here. Okay, the next one is, it says here, equalize the ascendance of microbes and the interface, right? So what that means is getting essentially the microbes that exist within the body and the body on the same page. So they're both synergistically working together. Okay, and this is what we find, again, what I mentioned earlier on in regards to part 1 about microbes in general, is that the perceived issue with microbes is that we catch something outside of us. Again, doesn't this sound familiar, right? The human perspective is to externalize everything. Everything comes outside of ourselves and influences it in a negative way. Now, that's just, 101 in controlling a person or a collective. So is to make them fearful or vulnerable of something outside of themselves, okay? Now, what we see with that is why we would do that, right? To synergistically bring the microbes and the body together as one, is because, the body's only as good as the state you provide it, which includes everything in the body, which means the microbes. So the microbes are consciousness at their core as well, and the consciousness that sustains them is the same energy that sustains us, which we define as with the word love. Okay, so you can see how they can easily become when we have an unbalanced state, right? Duality on the body, then that puts those microbes in an unbalanced state too. So it will affect their behavior, which we define as a infection. That's why I do that. Because yes, there's an infection, but not how you're taught it's the infection. Because an infection, the way you're taught, is it's something you catch that from outside of you. Instead of seeing that you're influenced by your outside stimuli through attention, intention, that then rocks the boat, so to speak, the body, that influences and affects the microbial balance that's already in the body. There's a difference. Okay, and what I mean by those microbes is bacteria, mold, fungus, yeast. Parasites and viruses are completely different things. They're not sustained on love. They're sustained on fear. They're more to do with programming and AI and mind and all that sort of thing. But we won't get into that. Let's keep going. Okay, next one is over here. Use flow to create a levitation response to branch timelines. Now, what that means is that's what we call a timeline clearing. And as we go about our days, right, in every moment we're making the choice of where we place our attention, how we use our intention. And that is then creating a path, right, creating our future. So when we talk about the word timeline, we're talking about also the word path, the word journey, the word future. All mean the same thing. And again, everything's in the now. There's not really a past or a future. Again, that's just part of linear time and control again, and it's a human perspective. Time is a human perspective, a construct built by humans to limit your experience, and limit an understanding of what's going on. So it's not part of that fabric of reality as an absolute, okay? Now, but we've got to realize in every moment, we've got infinite possibilities in the way we're going to use our energy to forge creation, forge a path, forge a journey, forge a future. So sometimes when something guiding us, directing us, that's not us through the mind thought pathway, then we can veer off course and create branch timelines that is leading us to an outcome that is not in the highest good for us. So goodbye ascension for us, but hello ascension for AI, let's say, because they're using the mind to control us, to create their creation. So, but the thing is, you're feeding that timeline to happen. That's your energy. right? So all you need is one timeline, which we call the sacred timeline, which is a timeline where you're making choices and decisions in the moment by being in the flow in the moment, and the heart leading that path, right? Because that's where your soul consciousness, that's more of you, that wants you to have a greater experience, and also to be a representation of that expansion, to keep extending that creation. That's why you're here. You only need one timeline, okay? And one thing about ascension for me over the years, this answer's never varied. It's always staying true. And I've always said, why do we fail to ascend? And the answer is always thought, right? Which is referencing the mind-thought pathway. It veers us, leads us off path, so we don't ascend. We need to get more into heart feel to ascend. And this is, a massive principle at the core of truly holistic in regards to everything we do, whether that's, the session work, ascension healing, reality coaching, but also the modalities that we formulate and provide to you to become self-empowered, become the healer of yourself, the healer of your family and your community, but also all the tools, energy tools that we make, right, is all to assist that, for you to remain on that sacred timeline for a successful ascension, which is the same pathway for you to get your vitality and wellness back, or to retain it. So anyway, let's keep going. Okay, so next one we've got is use intuitively aligned system. Now that's, again, one of the other systems that we've made, which is to do on biomechanics, so working on your alignment. So it's a system that I use to align people's backs, necks, skeletal systems, vertebrae, discs, connective tissue, cartilage, articular cartilage, releasing spinal nerves that have been compressed. And it's all done through distance. I have clients all over the world and they've got great results. I haven't physically manipulated or touched them. You got to understand that everything about you is energy, including your spine. There's a lot of people in the, again, the conscious spirituality community that will work energetically on everything. But when it comes to their spine, no, I need to be physically manhandled, right? Because there's this barrier in their head thinking, well, it's physical. But you're addressing everything else energetically. The spine's energetic as well. Okay, so that system is the very same system that I healed myself of my neck and back problems. And I was suffering daily with neck and back problems, migraines, all the associated headaches, associated factors that come with that, nerve pain down the leg, you name it. I had it. I tried all the other ones, acupuncture, osteopath, chiropractor, orthopedic surgeon, bone therapy, everything. I tried everything. And did I get some relief from it? Yes, but very short-term relief. This system provided long-term relief. And I then created that system to self-empower you, people that have neck and back and skeletal problems, so that you can take it in the palm of your hand and rectify that issue yourself. Because one thing I found with my problem, my neck and back, a lot of it was fear and feeling like I didn't have any say in sorting out my own neck and back. When all of a sudden you are able to do that, it's a completely different ballgame. So we use that within the system a lot for people, again, with neck and back issues. But again, we created that system we call intuitively aligned, that you can purchase at Truly Holistic, and you learn that, and you, again, therefore become the healer yourself, healer your family and your community. I really recommend it, especially also for practitioners that are also already working in the energy field, working on that aspect of it, of spine and skeletal stuff as well. Excellent system. And again, this system has history, because again, my grandmother used to do it in a way where she used to use intuition to figure out where the neck or back was out of place, but then it would be physically adjusted. What I did was to take it even further, is we're going to not only use the energy guidelines to find out what and assess what's going on, where someone's out of alignment, but also you can use that same energy to treat it, to heal it. right at the core. And what we do with that system, we just don't align. We work on the precursor of alignment, postural deficits. I tell you, you'd be amazed how many people have postural problems and they're not even aware of it. Because postural problems is, again, about consciousness. It's about self-awareness. The way that you move, the way that you're walking, the way that you're sitting, the way that you're standing. It's that self-awareness. And as the human, we're generally drawn and distracted to what's out here, and we just lose sight of ourselves. We really do, and it really affects us in a number of ways. More importantly than most things, your posture, and hence your biomechanical aspect of your body, your spine, your skeletal system. So we work on that, and we even work on the precursor of that, which is your ability to hold your energy. So no one does it to that level. So that's also part of this chart as well. So let's get going. Client needs to, just mute that. Okay, client needs to either allow surrender or forgive. And these are three principles. Again, I did a video on it. I'm not going to go into any massive depth here on my YouTube channel already about the three most important things you can do in your life, and they're about those three. No, that's coming up massively at the moment. And it's bound and connected to all health problems. Again, this is what we do at Truly Holistic. We go back to the roots, the origins, and we work at it there. There's no point working on superficial things for it just to come back and remanifest. And usually the reason it's remanifesting is the way that you are processing your life. Hence, that's why we want to teach you more about who you really are, what your reality is all about, all the rules, the universal laws in play in regards to how you go about using your energy to create your experience. We do all of that here. So anyway, let's keep going. Next one is to address trauma. Again, don't have to go into that in great depth. Again, trauma is, again, the way that we live our life, right? Yes, we had a bad trauma initially, a bad experience that, yes, we can put our hand up and say, it would have been great if we never had that original experience. But let's say you've had that experience. We can't erase that. Now, what we find with trauma, and which develops into PTSD and all these other things that then affect you down the line, it's not because of that one initial experience. It's the fact that you've carried it with you. Okay? And again, that gets into linear time and the way we process life through formulating mentalities through mind-thought pathway instead of heart-feel, where we congest, we create a state of congestion instead of flow. And what we do is we carry our past with us. So hence, what we do in the moment, in the now, becomes that future. And if we're carrying our past into the moment, what do you think our future is going to be a reflection of? Our past. No wonder you're still being negatively impacted and influenced with it. So again, we work at it that level, okay? And the key with trauma is you need to forge a path, a new way of living that is completely different to the way that you've been doing it. Because the way that you've been doing it is you've been holding onto something that is not in the highest good for you, which we would call a form of sabotage. And again, very, very brutal word, I understand that, especially in regards to people struggling with trauma. But again, we need to address the root, the origin of the issue, and that's what we do here at Truly Holistic. So here we go. Okay, next one is client needs to ascend out of duality into neutrality. Okay, so neutrality, okay, is what we call enlightenment. You'll hear the words again, spirituality, conscious community, becoming awakened or awoken. I don't really get into the woke aspect because there's a duality perspective on that, which is really skewed and very conflicted. That's duality, right? But a lot of people, when they feel like they're awakened, they've made it. No. Being awakened is just supposed to be a transitional period. But what we see when people get out of what they say is unawoken, being the conditioned human, is they get stuck and they're still placing their attention in areas that create conflict. Their energy goes into conflictive means, which means they're still in duality, even though they can say they're awoken. So what neutrality is about is that next phase that we're supposed to be going towards, which is enlightenment. Enlightenment's more about knowing who you are, not knowing about what secret societies are doing this and governments are doing that, which is all the dark stuff. Which again, through your intention means going towards that. What's the universal laws? Is that you're giving your energy. Those things are now holding your energy. That's not remedying that. Even though you're concerned or worried about, that's not you're feeding into that. You might not be aware of that, but you're feeding into that. So the only way that you starve that, and then you're creating a new future, new path for yourself, and indirectly then influencing people around you, right, is that you become enlightened in who you are, what you're capable of, and how you use your gifts. Because a lot of the times people in the awakened thing are unaware that they're still feeding their energy into the means that are still feeding duality, the thing that they're getting annoyed about or concerned about. Okay, that's still part of that vicious loop, which needs to be broken. So that, where it says client needs to ascend out of duality and neutrality, that's where quite often will go to that. With an individual like that's trying to move forward, but they're still stuck in duality because, again, and particularly where they're placing their attention, how they're using their intention. So let's go to the next one. Okay, the next one is to remove dis-ease and calibrate with being. Okay, so dis-ease is something perfectly normal. Now, the word dis-ease is to feel at unease. We feel uneasy. Okay, that's where the word dis-ease comes from, and the word disease. But it's not as simple as that, okay? Because, as I mentioned, feel is the extension of the heart, where our soul, our consciousness comes from, so we can trust in that. Okay, it's a guide, that's an awareness, right? That's why we have symptoms through the body, to provide an awareness that something's not feeling right here, and we need to either change my attention or change how I use my intention, do something differently until we feel more at ease, right? More at peace with self. So that's perfectly normal, but the problem with mind-thought pathway, the way we've been taught and conditioned as the human, is we respond and react to that in a very destructive way. We feel that uneasiness, like, for example, a lot of symptoms. And really our autopilot means that, there's something wrong immediately, right? And we get into fear and worry and concern. Again, all mind thought, nothing to do with heart feel. Even though those symptoms is a sense of feeling, but we meet it with thought. And it's just like, having two people at a table, having an interaction, a discussion, but they don't speak the same tongue, right? So one's speaking in French and one's speaking in Japanese. They're trying to get their point across, but they can't understand each other. Okay, if you understand by that analogy, that's what feel and thought is. Okay, so in awareness being presented through the body is feel, dis-ease, unease, symptoms, but we're taught to process everything through thought, which then we misinterpret it. And through that misinterpretation, we think and we overthink, which we call unrest. And therefore, through that process, we're creating. Because in every moment, our energy is going towards conversion of formless energy into formed creation. So we start creating more of the things we don't want instead of the things we do want. So hence, we call that miscreation. So that needs to be removed. And then we reinstate that area into a state of being, back to its natural state. Okay, because you've created a state that's unnatural. That's why you're feeling uneasy. Okay, that's the alarm bells of your consciousness trying to communicate to you that at the moment, Chris, you're not providing the right state that puts all the odds in your favor. So, become aware of how you're creating that state to begin with. Okay, that's really what symptoms are all about. Again, done a video on my YouTube channel. You can check it out. Okay, let's keep going. Let's get okay. Shift client from awakened to enlightened. Well, we've just talked about that, so we'll just move on. Very similar to what we did there about duality and neutrality. Now, it says here, allow gateway, which is the heart, to evolve all consciousness within the body or a component of the body. So what that's all about is essentially the expression, love heals all. Again, this is what we do at Truly Holistic. We want to simplify everything. You know, and that expression is gone through generations, decades, right? Because it holds weight. It has an authenticity connected to it. That's why things like that stick around. It's got stickability. So, for example, you know, when we often call it fall in love. Why? Because the act of falling of love is falling from the head into the heart. Getting away from here. This is the problem. And slipping into the heart, because we can only love with an open heart. Because that's true, authentic love. The love, what we perceive up here as the human, is not true love. That's conditioned love. Because the human is your conditioned self. So every perspective as the human, through mind thought, is going to be a conditioned perspective. It's not going to give you the truth. Okay? So what we do, obviously we'd have to get the client's heart open, but then we facilitate their expansion, that reservoir of infinite consciousness, because, you know, infinite energy, to now be directed to a certain area of the body that has been starving for it. Okay. So, as we talked about earlier, you know, and we talked in the first video, you know, the part 1, is that the body knows how to rejuvenate, regenerate, and heal itself. All it requires is the materials to do so, which is energy, and a lot of it, and a constant supply of it. So very connected to what we do there. Okay, so next one is discuss the difference between heart feel and mind think. Well, again, we've talked a lot about that. Okay, so we'd give them information, wisdom. Because the thing here at Truly Holistic, we're going to do some clearing work, but the thing is, that client is the pivotal aspect in continuing that healing phase. I'm going to open their heart, and I'm going to put them in a situation where now they have all the odds in their favor after coming to me, and all the odds were not in their favor. They were in mind thought. They were miscreating from that perspective. They were holding on to stuff instead of forgiving, trying to control everything instead of surrender, and all those principles, right? But I'm going to discuss all that stuff, so therefore you understand that. So therefore, when you go back into your life, you're going to apply those principles, not just for today, not just for a week, not just for a month, but the rest of your life. Okay? Because the person that is the key to your ascension, to you healing your illness, to maintaining wellness and vitality, is you. Okay? I call myself a healer, but really I'm an intuitive guide that then provides healing, but the key to your healing is you. Okay? Now, if anybody says otherwise and say, hey, I'm going to fix your problem, in one session, is lying. Now, have I had clients where we've done a session and they felt great afterwards and they have never had to come back to me because their health problem is sorted? Yes. But that's not always going to be everybody. Because again, it depends on the individual. What process are you using day in, day out in your life? Okay? For some people, they need to drop everything and they need to go about their life in a completely different way. The opposite to the way they've been doing it. And for some people, that might be difficult. Some people don't want to do that. Some people do. Okay. But that process, that pathway still remains the same. Okay. Right. We're getting there. Right. This is probably the most profound chart. So next one is use broadcasting system. So that's the other system that I created that you can be self-empowered. You can purchase yourself. And it's a transitional system that teaches you to use all your physical knowledge about mineral supplements, digestive enzymes, crystals, essential oils, superfoods, super herbs, and so on. But you use an energetic tool. We use the sun ring with it, but you can use tensor technology like tensor rings with it. And you learn to find out through your dowsing intuitive method. And again, part of the system is we teach you that. If you're perfectly, you don't know how to do that, yeah, it teaches you how to do that as well. And it's kind of like your energetic first aid. It's like, okay, I need vitamin C at the moment because I'm deficient in it, but I don't have vitamin C in my cupboard, the physical vitamin C. Well, I'm going to give it to me energetically. In fact, that's way better way of doing it, because you're not getting all the influential energy of all the people that processed it, packaged it, harvested, sold it, marketed it, and so on. You're getting the 400% energetic aspect of what that vitamin C is at its core, okay, through that method. And you can do that with a number of things. If you have digestive problems, you can tend digestive enzymes into your food as you're about to eat it, or into your digestive system before you're about to have your food. Infinite possibilities with that system. Wonderful system. But we also regularly use it in client sessions as well as the intuitively aligned system. So let's keep going. Next one is remove illness thought process. Again, illness, right? The word illness. At the core of illness, the origin of all illness, because illness is like a word that it's like a bracket of all the health conditions that we've kind of made up. We've used something to reference them, give them a word or a label, right? Is thought. Okay, the mind thought pathway is the origin of all illness we know. Okay, so if you're trying to address a health problem, an illness problem, and you are going to continue to live with a mind thought pathway, you're going to see very limited results. This is why people do get limited results. Okay. So what we do there is, yes, we're going to remove illness, but also going to provide some greater insight to that particular individual, that client, about how they can turn things around and get more into heart feel instead of mind thought. It's a big deal. Okay, next one is remove mentality of lack. Again, mentalities are a formulation that we created a mind thought pathway. This is where mental health comes into it, mental illness comes into it. Heart feel, what we're trying to promote, a way of processing your life, does not use mentality. So hence there cannot be a mental illness if we're in heart feel. Okay. Now, one of the most dangerous mentalities that the human has taken on board from an early age and takes through their whole life, and that is the mentality of lack. The human arc story is little old human, right? Because we've believed in this aspect that everything outside of us influences us, right? That externalization of our perspective, right? And we're kind of taught to be just one brick amongst a number of bricks in the wall, right? The collective humanity. And that really, we're just a little old human. We don't know. The experts know. I couldn't even know that, right? DNA, the medical field has used all these complicated terms so that the general public don't understand it, and they kind of think, well, we'll leave it up to the expert. That's too, it's too extensive and too complicated. Well, health DNA is actually a lot more simple than you think. Thinking is what complicates stuff. Mind is what complicates stuff. We need to simplify stuff, and this is a big push, that drive that we promote here at Trinity Holistic. And I talk about things as DNA. We talk about all these things in a lot more simplistic means, because as you do see it in a simplistic means, which is more heart feel than mind thought, you are then promoting wellness just by perceiving it in a different way, which we call a state of being. You've been taught to do everything and do and provide intervention after intervention. But you understanding things in a more profound and simple, which will be in a simplistic means, simplistic way. Trust me, advanced technologies moving forward to get proper results is going to be more simple. It's not going to become more complex. Complexity is just going to create more conflict and more confusion. That's what I see every day. Okay, so removing that can be very important, and making that sure that client is very aware of that, and they're promoting what they actually truly authentically are as a soul, as a consciousness, is very key in regards to that. And then the last one we have on here is work on insight, right? Our insight is another word for what science calls the pineal gland, what spirituality and consciousness communities call the third eye. Now, again, calling it insight gives it greater insight, right? Which definition of insight is a greater meaning, understanding of what something represents. Because we've got these two eyes, our external sight, which we know is one of our limitations, right? Sees less than 0.0035% of the electromagnetic spectrum of light, what we can see. And then we've got this, which is embedded in our head, right? So it's not external, it's not X-sight, it's insight, because it's an eye, it's got optic receptors, right? But this eye is more about your expansion within you, because everything happens and begins within you. Everything outside of you is being projected from what's within. Okay? And the problem we get when it says work on insight, what we see regularly with clients is these eyes over-dominate this eye. This eye is not going to show you sight per se. It's very much the same pathway as the heart through feel. And again, we know a lot about, with sleep, right? Melatonin, secretion from the pineal gland. Well, melatonin, what it truly is that's light that's seeping through from your expansion, your multiverse that's within you. Because the thing, human perspective is that, okay, when melatonin's secreted, right, when there's an environment void of light, right, when we go to sleep, go to bed, we go to sleep. But it's a human perspective because we're not sleeping. The body rests, but the body's not really you. It's just the vessel you're utilizing to extend your will through it, right? And the bigger picture of things. You're a consciousness that doesn't sleep. So hence, that is a time when your consciousness gets greater access to your infinite nature, which while you're awake, these eyes are open, you're kind of blocking and limiting your ability to connect into that, right? Being the human, right? So anyway, let's keep going. The next chart is what we call a path chart. And this path chart has got a number of questions that will lead us on a path, a direction that is going to give either the client greater insight, or it's going to give me a means of how do we help this person? What clearings am I going to need to do? A big part of my job is at the start of the session, people bring a focus, right? Things that, health problem, symptoms they're getting, things happening in their life. And it's for me, which I see as pieces of the puzzle, right? And my job is, yes, of course, I'm going to do some clearings to help them, make them feel better, to heal their issue. But my job is to put all those pieces together to make it a whole puzzle. So that person walks away not only feeling better, but also has greater insight into what that all represents and what that all means. Now, if we could practice, all of us being more heart-feel, all of us are going to gain access to that infinite wisdom for us to have a greater insight into what we are observing here, and therefore understand it in a more profound way. So hence we respond or react to it in a more supportive way instead of a constructive way instead of a destructive way. Because the game of duality, which is causing you to respond or react with a lack of self-awareness, which means lack of consciousness, right? And then we start forming creations in our life that then put the odds further against us. But that's ourselves doing that. A lot of people don't see that. They don't have the insight to see that. That could be part of what I'm creating. Because again, the human perspective is to always focus on externalizing things. It must be someone else. It must be something outside of me. That's part of the game. That's part of the hoodwinking, right? So this path chart, which there's two of them, is very beneficial in forging me in a direction that's going to help me address someone's issues. Now, the next chart is called the healing chart. Okay, and there's a number of healings on here, you know, such as the 3 principles we call, you know, allow, surrender, and forgive. And a number of other things, using some tools like the sun ring, divinity ring, neutralization ring, using the broadcasting system, intuitively aligned system. But those things there essentially are more about promoting something or charging the person with something beneficial than necessarily removing something. Like, for example, particular words like ascend, levitate. You know, that's after we've removed the gravity, the denseness, and then now we're going to lift the vibration of that person. So there's a number of healing things on there. One, generate heart feel, right, which is to promote that person to get out of mind thought and to now facilitate a pathway of heart feel, right? So they're now promoting a state that the body will support the body, will support that person's ascension. Yeah, so a number of things there. Next chart. It is called the Sustenance of Energy chart. Okay. And it's a great chart because the Sustenance of Energy chart starts to look